We'd really like to have a lively conversation now, and anyone who has not yet had a chance to ask a question, we'd encourage you to pose the first questions. Someone right here.
This is for Professor Washburn. You mentioned that the international justice movement is a machine. This network is just going to go forward. I think it was Gabor Rona who mentioned that what we're seeing now is just an anomaly. I was speaking with a State Department lawyer last year who said that what we see now is an aberration. We have had a couple of ad hoc tribunals in the 90s and that are continuing to go on right now. And of course we had Nuremberg. I tend to think, though, that maybe it's the cohesion of the international justice system that is the aberration, which is unfortunate. I agree with the movement. I think the fears of the ICC are trumped up. But I also think that maybe, you look at the actions of Russia, look at our own actions, look at the probably imminent weaponization of space in contradiction of treaties. I just am concerned that maybe, in actuality, the aberration we're seeing is this cohesion of the national justice system that might not be able to get traction. What do you think about that?
A methodology that I'm using a lot now in my work is a controversial methodology called scenario forecasting. The idea here is to imagine alternative futures and how, under different contingencies, different future scenarios would play out. You can also test out proposals, such as different formulations of the crime of aggression, against possible futures. From what I've seen after the Cold War and the advance of liberalism, the defeat of communism, the defeat of fascism in World War II, there's one dominant political philosophy, and that is liberalism. And if liberalism continues along its route, with its focus on the individual, its focus on rights rather than on duties, its focus on legalism, the checks and balances that are inherent in the systems, then we're going to see many analogies between the national political systems of the world today and the international system. So that's one of the factors that I'm basing my forecast upon. The other one is that this system is a disaggregated system. If you blew up the International Criminal Court tomorrow, the system would continue. The Rome system has permeated the national laws of so many states already, and I don't see it abating. Whether it's going to be delegitimated by its ineffectiveness, the inability to arrest political or military leaders who have committed massive crimes, that remains to be seen, but those ideas will remain latent, just like the Nuremberg principles remain latent for another moment when it can come back. So I think that the future is international. There's a case pending at the International Criminal Court. I'm involved, Georgia versus Russia. So that's an example of the involvement of the court.
Surely there are more questions. All right, having failed to encourage those who will, thank you, great.
In the interest of keeping you folks talking, because this is so interesting, Professor Turner, you were going to make a comment, and you haven't had an opportunity, and I like to make this an open question. What comment were you intending to make?
When you get to be my age, you forget after 30 seconds. I'm just trying to think what it was. There are a bunch of things. The young captain talked about the weaponization of space being a violation of treaties. It would have been in violation of the ABM treaty in certain settings, but today I don't know of anyone who says that, say a space-based missile defense system that did not involve nuclear weapons or WMD in space would be illegal. That's why the Russians and the Chinese are pushing this new treaty. As somebody was saying the other day about how outrageous it was that Bush he withdrew under Article 15 of the treaty. That was perfectly permissible. He gave the 6-month notice. That's the way it works. We have the 16 Diamond Rings case, in which the Supreme Court said once the Senate gives its consent to a treaty, its role with treaties is finished. It can't, interpret it. It can't do anything else. And it's very much like if you go back to the 1789 debate over the appointment removal process. You know, the Senate was joined in appointment, but not in removal. So the verdict, as also reaffirmed in the Myers case in 1926, was removal as an executive function. So certainly it has always been the power of the president to withdraw from a treaty. The Supreme Court upheld in the Taiwan Treaty case, Goldwater versus Carter, that was perfectly lawful act by the president. So there have been 100 things said I'd like to comment on, but my most important comment is this has been a heck of a good conference. Tom Romig and all of the other people involved, I can't remember the last conference that I've been to that was as well done as this, and you all just deserve A-plus grades across the board for all of you. So let me at least say thank you to Tom and everybody.
I'll just say one word in response to the first question about the chaos or whether international criminal justice is an aberration versus Guantanamo and so forth. And I think I fully agree with Noah. We're plainly in this grappling, only now developing, and there's a lot of injustice potentially, and I take Bob's point that we have to be careful. We heard from Philippe that things, you know, there are some very good standards and maybe some good developments in Europe, but the case that we described very briefly about Germany has been twice rejected by it's a request to the prosecutor, twice rejected. The second rejection is now on appeal. It's clear the Germans are going to drag their feet and they don't want to do anything with this case, but they are willing to extradite last week a Rwandan suspected in the assassination of the former Rwandan head of state to France. So a Rwandan, the Germans will extradite to face penalties for international criminal law violations, but not an American. And that is a very troubling development where we are now in terms of basic fairness, et cetera.
I agree with that.
Was there one more? Sorry.
First of all, this is the final long break. Would you please make sure that you pull these peak evaluation forms out of your folder? They're not long. This is the first time we've done a conference of this nature, and it would really help us a great deal if you would take just a minute to jot down your thoughts, suggestions, how we can do better, what we can do for you in the future, other topics and so forth would be very meaningful to us. Second, I want to make just a point of personal privilege, if I have any at all. I would like to just acknowledge all the wonderful law students that helped us put this entire production together. The Law Journal staff has worked behind the scenes for months, literally, in terms of working out transportation schedules, driving the presenters to and from the airport on a very complicated schedule, manning the registration table, just a whole host of things that had to go into this, and I want to personally recognize all of them and all the great job that they've done. I know you were anxious to get out of your third grade. I want to pay a special thanks to Sonny Mickle, the class of 2006, and Whitney Jamron from the class of 1987 for sponsoring our afternoon break. Thank you to them. And finally, do not miss our final panel. We have finally been able to persuade Dean Roman to moderate one panel of this conference, and he's going to wrap all of these wonderful topics up and try to point and lead us the way forward. So thank you. We'll see you back at 3 tomorrow.